Today's video, we're going to talk about should I track every step of a multi-step form on my landing page in my Google Ads account to make my Google Ads account and ads better. I'm going to answer that in detail on today's video so you know how much money you're losing or potentially not gaining by not having multi-step forms tracked all the way through. So if you have 3 stages of a contact form where you ask a question and then another question that pops up in step 2 and then another set of questions in step 3, basically what I'm clarifying for you on this video is to say, should you track step 1, step 2, and step 3 and then use all of those different unique conversions to steer your ads in Google Ads, or should I just track the last step and use that to steer my ads in Google Ads? I will clarify that on today's video. It's not so completely cut and dry. There's some different situations where you would do a variation of tracking all the steps, and I'm going to go over that. But in general, there's one way that always works the best. What we found works at our firm. And of course, that is to track the first and the last step in the process, and then utilizing those steps at different stages in the game, depending on where you're at with the progress of your ads and how much data you've built up in your account. So I'll go over all that and more on this video and give you a couple case studies to go along with it. But before I do, if you do not know who I am Corey Zyman, owner of Guaranteed PPC, an online advertising agency that specializes in guaranteeing results for their clients. That is, we do not charge our clients management fees until we can get them a certain minimum lift in their ad profitability, basically in excess of the management fees that we charge. We are the only agency out there doing anything like this, which should tell you something about the quality of the information you're receiving on today's video. So with that said, going into the content here, if you do not know it yet, multi-step forms, that is a form that's not asking all the questions that you want from the user all in one shot, convert better overall than single-step forms do, especially if you actually work the partial form fills that you're getting. So, in other words, if you have a big long form that's 5 steps long, and if you ask for the user's email on the second step, you can work that lead if they don't get all the way through the process, just as if they filled out the whole thing. That is actually how you get the most profit from your ads, even though, generally speaking, I don't recommend asking for the phone number on the second step like that. We've had clients ask us, hey, Corey, we got a lot of people filling out part of the form. Why don't we ask for the email or phone number in the second or third step so we get more actual people to contact? The reality is, if you ask it too early, ultimately, a lot of people just abandon the process, because ultimately what you do is you say, fill out this form here, at least the way that we're doing things at the firm, and you'll get an instant quote. That's the number one way we use a multi-step form at our firm. And so if you ask them before they get the quote, they're just not going to finish it. Now, if you were doing a regular contact form where you're like, we have call center services, fill out this form, and you break that form into 2 steps, ultimately, and you ask the email on the first step and then the rest of the shit that you want on the second step, you actually will make more money that way because you're not promising them something, so to say, at the end of the process. So you can actually and would actually want to ask it up front. So if you're going to promise a goodie, you want to ask the contact information last. If not, you want to ask it up front for that matter. And when you aren't promising them a goodie, you ask the email first because it's easy to give an email. And then if you want other information, such as company size, what they need, what they want, all that stuff, you ask it last, and you get that information, but you don't make it required up front because you'd still rather have their email and phone number versus nothing. And for that matter, you can ask for a lot of other information you would like, but not take a hit on your conversions because you're not asking for it all in one shot up front. Of course, with that said, you don't actually let them know that it's a 2-step form. You just say, for your call center services, enter your phone, your email, and then boom, some other questions pop up. So they didn't expect that they were going to get asked other questions. Maybe they want to fill it out. Maybe they won't. Either way, it's all just icing on the cake, basically at that point in time. You get the phone, you get the email coming to you, even if they don't fill out the second step of the form, which allows you to have extra information on some, but you'll still get the same amount of phone calls and emails that you ever would have. Multi-step forms convert better as a whole, and the reason why that is because it comes down to user psychology. People, when you ask them too many things at once, they're going to think that is too much work, and they're going to abandon the process. It's kind of like at amusement parks. If you go to an amusement park, the way that they have the line set up is you go in there and you see that there's a long line, but it doesn't look too bad. You get into the line. Once you get to the end of the line, you realize there's another line. And then once you get to the end of that line, there's another line. And they do that in order to increase satisfaction of the user overall, so to say. So when it comes to contact forms, ultimately a lot more people will get involved in the process if they did not realize the scope of what they're going to be asked up front. And then there's something called sunk cost fallacy, where people assume that they don't want to invest time into something and then feel like they lost that time, and they'd be more determined to complete the process because they don't want to feel like they wasted the time that they spent so far. Versus if they didn't invest any time, it's easier for them to abandon it because they don't have that. So you want to really think about multi-step forms. If you're asking for more than 2 or 3 pieces of information, you will almost always make more money asking for that information in a multi-step form process. And for that matter, going back to what I was saying before, you will also generally make more money for many of you guys that are trying to get form fills by not just asking for people's contact information in order to contact them, but having them enter their details for an instant quote or a quick calculation of what they would get with your service or product or whatever you're doing. And in the process of that, you get their information, and you're going to get it at a much higher rate than just saying, contact us if you want a salesperson contacting you, basically. So that's another thing to consider if you are running a PPC campaign right now, which you probably are if you're watching this video. Now, with that said, okay, if you break down your multi-step form, what you typically want to do is ask your easiest question up front. Then you're going to have another easy question that's a little slightly harder to kind of get them acclimated to the process of filling out a form. And then you're going to ask the info that you really need on like the third step of the process. And you could actually break this down into 7, 8, 10 steps like we've done in the past, so that you're on the third step, you're not asking 25 questions. If you have 25 questions you're legitimately asking, it needs to be at least 5 steps long if you're going to maximize the conversion rate of your form as a whole, people actually getting all the way through it. But the key thing is, because of the sunk cost fallacy, where people do not want to lose time invested in a process, and once they get into it, they're more likely to continue than if they didn't invest that time up front already. You are going to want to, a lot of times, come up with a multi-step form just to have that going for you to increase your conversion rates. What I mean by that is, let's say you only want their email, their phone number, their company size, and like notes or whatever, something like that. Or like what is it that you're interested in from us? Let's say you want those 5 fields. You'll often make a lot more money by asking them a dummy, or I call it like a decoy question up front, just to get them involved in the process. There's always a question that people are more than happy to be able to answer and give, like, how much would you like to make? How much profit would you like to make? How many leads would you like in our business? How many leads would you like? Or if you're doing a diet program, how much weight would you like to ultimately lose in the first 90 days? You ask a ridiculously, stupidly easy question like that right up front. Even though you don't need that information, you could make a lot more money with your same ad traffic asking for them up front, because they actually want to answer it. And then once they're involved in the process of answering, they're more likely to keep going. It's like that whole psychological trick with sales, and people say in sales that what you're trying to do is just get people to say yes. You ask them a question. Do you like scratching your ass when it itches? Yes. Do you like, sitting in your easy chair and watching cable TV sometimes? Yes. Would you like buying this brand new car? Yes. They're more likely to say yes the third time when they've already said yes twice. People, when they get into a groove, they don't like to stop or don't want to stop. So you ask these questions so that when they get to the questions that you really want to have them answer, that they aren't going to want to answer because it takes a long time to type in the fields. A lot of times people don't type very fast, or whatnot. And they're more likely to fill it out now, which, by the way, there was a study done, and it was shown that people would rather clean a toilet than fill out a contact form on a website. People genuinely hate it. And for that matter, that's the reason why for most of our clients, when you're not talking about something like home services where you either need somebody right away or nothing, the best leads are all going to come from a form fill, because the effort it took to fill out the damn form eliminated any tire kickers in the first place because of this. So anyway, going back to what I was saying here, so you're going to ask an easy question, and if you don't have one to ask that's legitimately needed by you or useful by you, just come up with a dummy one. And then another dummy one, then ask the information you need. You'll make generally more money that way than just asking them the questions you need. And then for that matter, your request for the email and phone number that you have should come at the very end of the process, which it's hard to make money without phone numbers, but if you add a phone number field, it's going to cut the amount of people filling it out significantly. So with that said, now with the topic of the video at hand here, should I track every step of a multi-step form in Google Ads to get the most results and ROI out of my Google Ads? And the answer to that is you should track them all as a secondary option of gathering data. That is, you want to know if people are getting stuck on your form, where are they specifically getting stuck? You could set up multi-step form tracking in your Google Analytics account just so that you have the data. As it comes to Google Ads though, specifically, you want to track, which, by the way, if you track it in Google Analytics, you can import those goals in your Google Ads account by linking your Google Analytics account to your Google Ads account. But within Google Ads, from what we found, basically all you're going to want to do is track the beginning step and the final step. So whether somebody answers the first question and whether somebody submits the final submit button at the end. And the reason for that is because of something called machine learning and learning mode in Google Ads. Every single time you make a significant change on your Google Ads account over a certain size or scope or volume of changes, it could also be, your campaigns are going to go back into learning mode, which Google then forgets about all the things that it used to get you the return you're getting now, and your traffic is going to go down the shitter, the quality of the traffic you get is going to go down, and your ROI is going to go in the toilet, and then it'll come back eventually. And this happens horribly bad when you try to switch your campaigns to optimize one conversion to another conversion type. Like, for instance, I actually kind of made a mistake on this channel. I talk about, for our clients, we're always going to build up sales data in our ad account, and we'll track leads, that is phone calls, form fills, and then we'll switch over to optimizing for phone calls later on. And what some people have been doing on this channel was just rambunctiously switching from one to the other, and then the results are going to go down, and they weren't prepared for it. I mean, certainly you're going to get a much better return over time optimizing for sales and profit than leads, because leads are just, the cheapest leads are not the best leads. But they weren't prepared for 30 days or 60 days of volatility in the results, and then they had to back out of it because they couldn't take a short-term hit like that. And so I started mentioning, to expect this going into it. But with that said, if you are optimizing for people submitting the first question here, and you got to switch to having the campaigns optimized for the second step being completed, your campaigns are going to go through 30 or 60 days or something like that of relearning, because the campaigns are going to go back into learning mode, which, by the way, you could simply track all these in your Google Ads account. You can have some goals. You could have, for instance, the goal that tracks step 1 answering as primary in your conversion menu. And then this one could be marked, the goal that tracks the second step could be marked secondary. The goal that tracks the third step could be marked secondary. And then what you could do is just at a certain point mark the goal that tracks this first step secondary, and then mark this one primary. And then with that, Google is going to only look at the second conversion goal that tracks the second step in optimizing the ads. But when you switch over to that, you're going to have 30 to 60 days of, because the volatility of results can actually set your ROI negative 50%, which is pretty typical for 30 days or maybe up to 60 days. Usually it's around 30 days. That takes a big wet bite out of your profits. So with that, we'll generally optimize for people filling out the first step on the form first. The reason for that is because you can collect a whole shitload of data right away up front. And that data is going to be that volume of data, because you need a certain volume of data for Google's ad serving algorithm to understand how to really run your ads. And you gather it quick, on that first step of the form. And it actually is better than nothing, because people who filled out the first step, even though they're not, it doesn't correlate with profit strongly, it correlates with it somewhat strong, or at least somewhat. And so you can set the campaigns to optimize for that, which will build up a bunch of data right away, which the algorithm that runs your ads needs a few dozen conversions to be able to start steering your ads. You'll build it up quickly, but you only will get so far with that. Then, at a certain point, you'll want to switch over to optimizing for people who filled out the last part of your multi-step form. You are building up these conversions in your account with the goal marked secondary that tracks this last step of the form, and then you'll switch over the campaigns to optimize for this last step of the process. The reason why we track the last and the first step is, going back to what I was saying before about campaigns going back into learning mode, I don't want to take a hit on my results just to optimize for people filling out the first to the second part of the form, because the quality of the user does not vary that much that fills out the first versus the second step. It varies. It is a little bit more. People who fill out the second step are going to be correlated with people who actually buy stronger than people who fill out the first part of the form, but not that much. There's a huge difference, though, from somebody who fills out the last part of the form with the actual phone number and email where the rubber hits the road than people who fill out the first question on the form. So if I'm going to take a hit on my results short term and have the campaign go back into learning mode, switching over the goals and what goal the campaign's optimizing on, I'm going to want to see a big difference in my results once I get past the learning mode in my campaigns. So when I get about 30 conversions on my conversion goal that tracks the last step of the form, I'm going to switch over the campaigns to optimize for that form itself. Which, by the way, if you have different campaigns that are at different stages, instead of just switching a goal in the conversion menu from primary to secondary and then another one from secondary to primary, your other option is to have the goal that tracks the first part of the form primary and the goal that tracks the last step is primary, and then on each campaign in the goal settings, you could switch that campaign to optimize for first step and then eventually last step. But with certain campaigns that have racked up more data at a particular time, you could switch that one to optimize for the last step. Some other campaigns that haven't gotten very many conversions yet, you keep optimizing for the first step on those. And then that will get you the most efficient rise to the top with your account, given that certain campaigns are going to build data up quicker than others. So when a campaign gets 30 conversions, you can switch it over. For the most part, though, I will admit that we usually switch over all the campaigns at once. And if all the campaigns cumulatively, assuming that they're promoting the same exact service, if they are, I'm not going to wait on each campaign. I'm going to wait for 30 conversions from all the campaigns combined, and then I'm going to just switch all the campaigns to optimize for the last part of the form at that point, because Google's going to use the learning from one campaign for the other, because we're pretty much promoting the same thing, or it's the same service we're promoting, or same item that we're selling here, that we're developing leads for. Therefore, Google's going to be able to not need 30 conversions for each campaign. If each campaign promoted a different item or service, then you would want 30 conversions on each campaign, and then you would want to do what I mentioned a second ago, yet letting the goal settings menu on each campaign dictate what goal you're actually optimizing for, the first step or the goal that tracks the last step. So that is the answer, is as it pertains to Google Ads and tracking of multi-step forms, what you should do. This is what we found at our firm is the most efficient way to do it. You track first and last, either on an account level or on a campaign level. You wait until the last step gets at least 30 conversions, and then you switch over. You're going to go through some volatility while you switch over. And then once you get to the other side of the volatility, you'll be on your next plateau of growth. And you'll make a lot of more money optimizing for the last step than you will the first step. So don't make the mistake of thinking, well, I got 1,000 first step conversions and only 125 last step conversions, because I'll optimize for first step because there's so much more data there. Volume of data certainly matters, but it only matters to a point. There's a point where the volume of data is overshadowed by the quality of the data, and more specifically, how closely the data that you have correlates with profit that you're making, so to say. Now, Some other stuff to mention here, and I guess I should say before I do, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, you should, because the information I'm sharing with you on this video here and channel is coming to you from somebody who's been doing ads for 20 years. All I do all day long, my full-time job is to do ad strategy for clients at our firm, and I share what works on the weekends on this channel, which nobody's really doing that as far as I know. There's people that run YouTube channels who don't run any ads, and they just talk about it, and that information's wholly useless. You have to be in the mix doing the work to be able to know what's going on. And the people that know what to do, they aren't making YouTube channels. I have to work 70, 80 hours a week just to do this. So if you're going to subscribe to, or learn from anybody in terms of how, learning how to make money with ads, subscribe to this channel already if you haven't. It's the best information you're going to find. You can also check out my blog though on my site at guaranteedppc.com/blog. The blog has step-by-step advice and instructions on how to use the strategies we're using at our firm to guarantee clients results as well. If you like the channel, you're going to like the blog because there's visuals, there's screenshots, everything you need to use the strategies that we use. So you should check that out as well if you like the channel already. If you have any questions, by the way, about anything I'm covering here, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single, and I do mean every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel. And it doesn't even have to be about the topic of the video. You could ask me any ad-related question, and in general, I'll answer it. So, if whatever you have a question about, you can always leave me a comment in the comment section. And I'll get back to you within the next day. Now, for that matter, as we're talking about multi-step forms, I also just wanted to mention here, as a side piece of advice, the main thing that people have problems with when it comes to forms is form spam. It's so easy to program a bot to fill out a form on your site that people have a lot of problems with it. And the reason why they do this is because they're doing click fraud for the most part, or it's competitors filling out your form, one or the other. So if you are getting form spam, and most of this comes from display campaigns, but not only just display. If you're running display campaigns, YouTube campaigns, Google display campaigns, demand gen ads, what I would recommend to you is to add email and phone number validation to the last step of your form. That will, because there's services out there that will make sure an email is a real email that's sendable and a phone number that's also callable. If you mandate both of those, the amount of form spam you get will be drastically less because the bots will fill in generic phone numbers and email addresses. There's more sophisticated bots that will put real emails in there, but it's a lot harder for them to put real phone numbers. And certainly, it could at least cut down 80% of your spam right then and there. However, sometimes in some spaces, that's not enough. If that happens to you, you should do offline conversion tracking. And for that matter, I'm doing offline conversion tracking already on every single campaign I'm running now because form spam's an issue. And because I don't want to optimize for forms, or form submissions, I want to optimize for profit. So I'm going to score the leads between 1 and 10. If a lead is valid and it looks like it's sellable, and I'm going to take that lead, I'm going to score it between 1 and 10, and then I'm going to send that information back into my Google Ads account, and I'm going to steer my Google Ads based upon that information. And for that matter, so going back full circle with what I was talking about here, you're going to start out optimizing your Google Ads campaigns for first step conversions, then third step conversions, then forms that were validated by your sales staff as valid. So you would go with maximize conversions bidding strategy. And then the final step is to optimize for leads that have high lead scores. So maximize conversion value bidding strategy and looking specifically at the offline conversion goal that you set up to track qualified leads specifically. Or if you normally close a sale within 90 days every time, you just, instead of tracking whether the lead is qualified, just skip that step and track whether the lead closed or not. And then you send the revenue, signed contract value, to Google Ads, and then you optimize for profit using maximize conversion value bidding strategy instead. Which, for the most part, on display campaigns, whether you're talking about even Google Display Network, YouTube, offline conversion tracking is going to be necessary for it to make money because there's too much spam and too much junk traffic. People that are, a lot of times people will pay people to fill out your form too. And I won't get into all the particulars on that. So that's a big part of getting multi-step forms to be profitable on Google Ads with the ads you're running. And if you're running search ads, it's the same thing. There's it's less to do with getting rid of spam, which a lot of times you still have spam. You have click fraud that you got to get rid of, and the offline conversion tracking fixes that as well. But you also want to make sure your campaigns are going to get better and better, and they will continuously get better the more data you collect if you actually track things down to the level of profit, because it takes a long time to build up a certain amount of revenue data to squeeze out every little level of efficiency from your ads using that profit data, versus if you're only optimizing for first step conversions, you're going to hit a plateau with your results fairly quickly. If you want to know how to do this, you can reach out to our firm. We set this type of thing up for clients. I can set you up the best multi-step form with the offline conversion tracking, all of it that you need. I can guide you through the process. And if you want, we can guarantee your results. That is, you increase your profit a certain minimum level, or we won't take a fee. If you're interested in that, reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com. We also sell ad templates. If you've already worked in a niche market that we've worked in a different city or country, we could sell you the winning ads, landing page template, campaign template that works for your niche market, and you copy paste that into your ad account, and then you can get the same results we're getting with none of the work, time, and money that we spent to figure out how to get it. We've worked in over 100 different niche markets, so if you want results in your market or just get into a new market, just ask us what results we've got in the markets we worked in and use what we got. Why start from scratch when you don't have to? If you're interested in that, also reach out to me at my firm at guaranteedppc.com. As a side note, and a final note, I should say, we also offer coaching. I've been doing 30-minute coaching calls with individuals that reach out to me from this channel, and people are greatly grateful for the information they're getting on these coaching calls, where I can go through everything that you're doing, your website, packaging, pricing, your ads, landing pages, all of it, and tell you where the bottleneck is and what's stopping you from getting your results, and get you on the right track again. 98% of the time, I can tell you where the bottleneck is with an ad campaign, why you're not growing anymore. Because they've been doing this for 20 years now, and this is all I do. So if you're interested in that, also reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Tracking first and last, and then optimizing for first, and then later on last, and then eventually profit or leads that verified as a high quality lead is your path to making the most money overall, and then making the most money short term as well, starting out the process. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'll see you on the next one.
Remember when I said Google Ads was important during this video? Well, this video here tells you how to do it.